Welcome to Law and the Machine, where artificial intelligence meets the legal system, liability, regulation, intellectual property, and the government's uncomfortable role as both rulemaker and AI adopter. The law wasn't written for this.
Imagine a court case where the star witness isn't human, but a piece of AI-generated audio or video. And it's not just flawed, it's intentionally designed to mislead, to lie.
That's the chilling reality that the legal system is increasingly grappling with. Society is moving beyond simple doctored images into an era where a silicon witness can present what appears to be irrefutable evidence, a confession, an incriminating act that never actually occurred, and it's becoming incredibly difficult to tell the difference.
So it's not just about misinformation in the news cycle anymore. This is about deepfakes directly impacting criminal indictments, potentially sending innocent people to jail, or letting the guilty walk free because the authenticity of any digital evidence can be called into question.
Exactly. The integrity of the entire evidentiary process, from investigation to trial, is under threat. The problem isn't just the existence of these fakes, but the sheer sophistication that makes them almost indistinguishable from reality, even to trained eyes, and, crucially, to the algorithms that are increasingly relied upon to detect them.
It raises a fundamental question. When the silicon witness lies, who's ultimately responsible for unmasking the deception? And what does that do to the very foundation of justice?
Traditionally, courts have relied on a pretty clear chain of custody and established forensic techniques to verify evidence. Think fingerprints, DNA, authenticated documents. But deepfakes introduce a completely new category of evidence where the very nature of what's real and what's fabricated is blurred.
It's a profound change. For centuries, the law has operated on the assumption that certain forms of evidence, particularly audio and visual recordings, provide an objective record. Now, that assumption is being fundamentally challenged. Legal scholars are pointing out that current evidentiary rules simply weren't designed for a world where AI can conjure a convincing reality out of thin air. So how are prosecutors and defense attorneys even beginning to approach this? Are deepfakes being successfully introduced as evidence, or are they primarily being used to cast doubt on legitimate evidence?
Both, unfortunately. There have been instances where deepfake audio has been used in civil cases to simulate conversations, attempting to prove a contractual agreement or a personal slight. In criminal contexts, deepfakes are being weaponized by defense teams to sow doubt. If a real video of a crime exists, a defense lawyer might argue it could be a deepfake, thereby eroding its probative value without needing to prove it is a fake. The mere possibility is enough to create reasonable doubt.
That's a powerful and insidious tactic. It's like a digital version of the dirty hands argument, but instead of questioning the evidence collector, you're questioning the evidence itself.
And the tools to create these fakes are becoming more accessible. This isn't just nation-state actors anymore. Sophisticated deepfake software can be found online, and the barrier to entry for generating convincing fakes is dropping rapidly. This democratization of deception means the problem is only going to proliferate.
The challenge for the courts, then, isn't just detecting the fake, but establishing new standards for what constitutes authentic digital evidence. What kind of legal frameworks are being proposed to address this?
Several approaches are being discussed. One is to strengthen evidentiary rules around digital provenance, essentially creating a more robust chain of custody for digital evidence, perhaps involving cryptographic watermarking or secure blockchain-based logging to prove a file hasn't been altered. Another idea is to introduce specialized deepfake expert witnesses who can testify to the authenticity, or lack thereof, of digital media.
But even those solutions seem like a constant race against the technology. If AI can create the fake, can't it also learn to bypass the watermarks or fool the detection algorithms?
That's precisely the cat-and-mouse game that is currently unfolding. Researchers are demonstrating that deepfake detection models can be fooled by adversarial attacks, where subtle modifications are made to a deepfake that are imperceptible to humans but cause the detection algorithm to classify it as real. It's an arms race with no clear end in sight. The more precise question becomes, what level of certainty is required in a court of law when the tools of deception are so advanced?
It brings up the classic legal dilemma of beyond a reasonable doubt. If doubt can be so easily manufactured, how can justice ever be truly served?
Some legal scholars are suggesting a fundamental shift in how digital evidence is valued might be necessary, perhaps elevating human testimony and corroborating physical evidence above standalone digital media, or demanding multiple independent authentications for any piece of digital evidence presented in serious cases. But that's a radical departure from current practices.
This whole situation also highlights a deeper tension, especially when considering the government's role in all of this.
Indeed, this leads to a discussion of the conflict of interest.
For this first instance, the specific issue of deepfake detection warrants consideration. Many government agencies, particularly in law enforcement and intelligence, are actively seeking and purchasing deepfake detection software. They need these tools to fight disinformation and identify fraudulent activity.
But here's where the lines blur. The very companies that sell this detection software are often the same ones that are heavily invested in AI research, including the development of advanced generative AI models. Some of these firms or their key personnel are also actively advising government bodies on appropriate standards for AI use, including how deepfakes should be handled in legal proceedings.
So you have a situation where a company is selling the cure, but is also potentially involved in developing technologies that could exacerbate the disease. And then they're advising the regulators on how to set the rules.
Precisely. Imagine a major AI firm that supplies deepfake detection tools to, say, the FBI or a state attorney general's office. At the same time, that same company might be contributing to industry working groups or even directly consulting with congressional committees or judicial advisory panels that are drafting guidelines or legislation for the admissibility of digital evidence or for the very definition of a deepfake.
So they have a vested commercial interest in both the problem and the proposed solution, and then they get a seat at the table defining the rules of engagement. This sounds like a classic case of regulatory capture.
It is. Their recommendations for detection standards or legal frameworks could inadvertently or even intentionally favor their own proprietary technology, making it harder for competitors to enter the market or for independent researchers to validate their methods. They become embedded in the public infrastructure, shaping the technical requirements that only their products can fully meet.
And the government, needing these advanced tools, becomes reliant on these specific vendors, creating a feedback loop. The more the government invests in one vendor's solution, the more difficult it becomes to switch, further entrenching that company's influence over policy and procurement.
It's a significant concern because it means the very standards of truth and evidence in the digital realm could be influenced by commercial interests rather than purely objective legal or scientific principles. And it leaves a critical question hanging. Can the neutrality of the silicon witness or its judge truly be trusted when the very definitions of truth and deception are being shaped by those who profit from both?
Looking at the broader picture, the issue of deepfakes as silicon witnesses goes beyond just individual criminal cases. It fundamentally erodes trust in digital media as a whole.
That's the long-term impact. If a point is reached where any audio, video, or image can be credibly dismissed as a deepfake, regardless of its true authenticity, then the public's ability to discern truth from falsehood in the digital sphere collapses. This has profound implications for journalism, historical record-keeping, and even democratic processes.
So the challenge isn't just technical or legal, it's also societal. How do you rebuild trust once it's been so thoroughly fractured?
It necessitates a multifaceted approach. On the technical side, continued investment in robust, open-source detection methods and transparent digital provenance systems is crucial. Legally, adaptive frameworks that can evolve with the technology are needed, possibly including new criminal offenses for the malicious creation and dissemination of deepfakes, alongside stricter evidentiary rules.
And on the societal front?
Education is key. Public awareness campaigns to teach digital literacy, critical thinking about online media, and how to spot common deepfake tells can help. But ultimately, the legal system's ability to maintain its integrity in the face of these silicon witnesses will depend on its willingness to adapt rapidly and decisively.
And on the societal front?
Education is key. Public awareness campaigns to teach digital literacy, critical thinking about online media, and how to spot common deepfake tells can help. But ultimately, the legal system's ability to maintain its integrity in the face of these silicon witnesses will depend on its willingness to adapt rapidly and decisively.
So, to synthesize the points covered today about the deepfake indictment and the silicon witness,
First, deepfakes are not just a nuisance. They are a direct threat to the integrity of legal proceedings, capable of fabricating evidence that can sway judgments and undermine justice.
second, existing evidentiary standards were not designed for AI-generated falsehoods, leaving courts scrambling to establish new ways to authenticate digital media in an era of sophisticated deception.
Third, the constant technological arms race between deepfake generation and detection means there's no single permanent solution, requiring continued innovation and adaptation from legal and technical communities.
Fourth, there's a significant concern about regulatory capture, where companies developing and selling AI detection tools also influence the very legal and technical standards for their use, potentially creating biased frameworks.
And finally, the broader erosion of trust in digital evidence could have profound, long-lasting consequences for public discourse, historical accuracy, and the foundational principle of truth in our society.
This raises a critical question. As the power of AI to create and destroy digital reality grows, can legal systems truly keep pace, or is society heading towards a future where truth in a courtroom becomes an ever more elusive concept?
That's all for Law and the Machine. Join us next time as we continue exploring where AI and the law collide. If you found this useful, subscribe. We appreciate it.
The law will catch up, eventually.